Talk NBA free agency. Here's what the champs have done since Friday. LA has brought in Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell, Wesley Matthews so far. Schroeder finished runner-up for Sixth Man of the Year last season, while Harrell was the winner of that award. And then Markieff Morris tweeting that he's returning to the Lakers. Marc Gasol is finalizing a deal, according to Woj. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is locked up as well. Max, all that being said, who is the biggest threat to the Lakers in the West?
I actually think, based on what I've seen so far in the offseason, where I think the Nuggets really didn't take a step forward, where I think the Clippers maybe got marginally better with the Ibaka signing, where I look around, obviously the Warriors are hobbled. I think it's the Mavericks if they stay healthy. Porzingis won't start the season because they're being very careful with his knee. But assuming that he is rested and healthy, and he'll have most of a regular season to ramp up and to make sure he's in shape for the playoffs. In fact, he's going to play, especially considering the start date of the season, he's going to play the vast majority of the regular season, knock wood. I look at that Mavericks series against the Clippers, and I thought the Clippers were lucky to get past them. The Mavericks, don't forget, the Clippers were lucky when Porzingis got ejected for something he shouldn't have been ejected for. They won that game, and then eventually Porzingis couldn't play, and they won out. But I thought the Mavericks were the better team based on what I saw, and when both teams were at full strength, they were better. And by the way, Luka Doncic is a superstar, and he's so young, he is likely to get better. There's actually room for improvement in his game. He can shoot the ball better. He takes a lot of threes. But he can shoot the ball better, and he looks like a shooter. Like when he shoots the ball, you go, yeah, that looks good. I expect his shooting to get better, Stephen A., which is scary when you think about it. I expect his defense to get better because he's not a good defender, although maybe not quite as bad as his reputation at this point. When I look at Kleber and the roster surrounding these guys, they have length, they have shooting. I think the Mavericks are the biggest threat to the Lakers if they are healthy.
I disagree with you. I think the number one threat to the Los Angeles Lakers, who are the clear I don't want to say by a mile, but pretty damn close. The Los Angeles Lakers did their due diligence this offseason. They put in the work that nobody else in the Western Conference put in, which is inexplicable to me. And I think acquiring a guy like, Montrezl Harrell, keeping Morris, adding what they added to the equation, trade and what have you, I definitely think that the Los Angeles Lakers are the clear prohibitive favorite. Number two behind them would be the Los Angeles Clippers. As far as I'm concerned, the Dallas Mavericks improved defensively, but they've taken a step back offensively. I'm not a believer. The Denver Nuggets should not have lost Jeremy Grant. I don't know why he took $60 million from Detroit, but didn't take it from Denver. Doesn't seem to make much sense to me, even though I believe in Michael Porter Jr. I still think that the Denver Nuggets, in terms of their depth, I don't think they're the same team. I think the Los Angeles Clippers are the team to look out for. When you look at Harrell was obviously the Sixth Man of the Year. He was an Energizer Bunny off the bench, but he doesn't necessarily have Ibaka's game. Ibaka's got his size, his height, maybe even a little bit taller. He definitely has a better perimeter shot. He's a better rim protector as well in terms of, blocking shots, if not rebounding. All of those things added to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and their motivation, having something to prove after getting bounced out the way that they did. I don't think enough can be said about that. I'm certainly not saying they're better than the Los Angeles Lakers because we know better. But when you look at the fact that they've got a new fresh voice in Ty Lue, who's anxious to prove some things, who knows a thing or two about how to coach LeBron James, let alone against him. Then you combine that with Kawhi Leonard, your best player in the world, Max, at least until he got bounced out by Denver. The bottom line is that when you consider all the things that they had to do to acquire Kawhi Leonard, if there is somebody that's got to step up and produce and shows that he was worth all the sacrifices they made to get him, it's him, Mr. Load Management himself. He is a great, great player, a top 5 talent in the league. But he ain't even in the top 20 when it comes to leadership. We all know that. Paul George is a star, but you can't be a superstar unless you show up when it really, really counts, which he has yet to prove. And I love the guy. But you combine those two with their talent, with the motivation, with Ty Lue and Serge Ibaka being added to that equation. I would say, even though they're not better than the Lakers, they're better than everybody else in the Western Conference when it really, really counts.
Know something? I like the offseason move of picking up Ibaka, especially on the deal they did, but he's not going to fix what you just said, Stephen A. I would be with you on the Clippers if I thought Paul George was a rise to the occasion kind of guy. Now, Kawhi choked in Game 7, right? Like, he had a bad game, especially in the second half, but it was
what do you mean
odd
he's not
because
going to
it's
fix
so
what I said?
unlike him. What I'm saying is, when you point to Paul George and talk about becoming a superstar instead of just an all-star, you were the one who made a big deal about him hitting the side of the backboard, right? The acquisition of Serge Ibaka doesn't fix that in Paul George, who's really one of your centerpiece. Like, you have two centerpiece, right, cornerstone guys, Kawhi and Paul George. When I look at the Mavericks and I look at their cornerstone guys, Luka Doncic is a killer. And Kristaps Porzingis, give me Porzingis in the playoffs if he's healthy all day over Paul George in the playoffs especially. And then I mentioned the supporting cast, guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, right? Like, good, long, they can defend, they can shoot. And they had Josh Richardson, a real 3-and-D kind of wing. And they had a good offseason, especially considering it looked like they had limited resources. If they stay healthy, to me, the Mavericks have a top two that stack up with just about anyone. Even if you wanted to say who's the best top two other than LeBron and AD, this upcoming season, I anticipate that's going to be Luka and Porzingis, and they have a deep and effective supporting cast and a real coach. I really think it only matters. The health is really the only question for me. If they stay healthy, to me, that's the team.
Well, that's a big if because of Porzingis, and we know how fragile he is. Talented, but fragile. And when the game slows down in the postseason, they tend to get more physical with you. Obviously, he can put up buckets. He's 7'3", and he can shoot the rock. We get what Porzingis brings to the table when healthy. The reality is, though, because the game slows down and you're allowed a bit more physicality, that usually hinders him in some capacity. That's number one. Number two, again, you can't fix Paul George, but that was an aberration. I don't expect him to hit the side of the backboard again, okay? I still expect him to average over 20. I think his shooting percentage will be better. But Serge Ibaka is an upgrade from Harrell, who I love. Love Harrell. But he's not Serge Ibaka on the defensive side of the ball as a rim protector, and he's certainly not Serge Ibaka in terms of the ability to hit those shots. And you got to remember, because Serge Ibaka can hit those shots, he's a guy that's going to get some of those opportunities that Montrezl Harrell never presented. Third and more important, let's understand this about the game of basketball. If you are not a threat from the perimeter, it allows me as a defense to key even more on the perimeter threats because I don't have to spread my defense but so much, and I'm not compromised because I don't have to worry about Harrell on the perimeter. But I got to worry about Ibaka because not only can Ibaka hit a 15 to 17 foot shot, he can hit threes. And if he can hit threes and he's on the court with a Kawhi Leonard, with a Paul George, with a Lou Williams, I'm sorry. I think that when you look at the Clippers against everybody outside of the Lakers, I definitely believe that the Clippers could easily be the number one threat to the Lakers, especially when you consider the fact that this could be Kawhi and Paul George's last year in LA with the Clippers. They got a player option after this upcoming season.
Look, I hear your Ibaka point. Him and Morris especially give you power forwards who can shoot the ball and defend. But as I just mentioned, the Mavericks also have power forwards with size who can shoot the ball and defend. And the Mavericks have size, obviously, with Porzingis. And the Mavericks have a superstar who leads in the way that you want Kawhi to lead. You lament the fact that Kawhi doesn't lead the way Luka leads. And, by the way, as opposed to the Clippers, who we know who they have. Kawhi is who he is, and he's great. Paul George is who he is, and he's excellent. They have ascending talent on the Mavericks, and they got better in the offseason.
Defensive talent.
Stephen A., we just saw these
talent, not
play.
offensively. Defensive talent, not offensively.
We just who doesn't have offensive talent?
Dallas. I said they haven't ascended offensively. They've ascended defensively. They lost Seth Curry. That's a big loss,
because
Matt.
of Richardson.
They lost Seth Curry. That's a big loss.
I hear you. I hear you. Because of Richardson, but Richardson does give them defense and enough three to call him a 3-and-D player. Like, he is legit. On this team, Stephen A., you have ascending superstars, and the main thing for me is this. They were my sleeper team last year, right? If insofar as you have a sleeper team in the NBA. I saw a series that the Clippers were lucky to win. They won because the Mavericks weren't healthy. Had the Mavericks been healthy, they'd have beaten the Clippers.
All right, let's stay with the hoops, guys, but we're all from the East Coast, so we go there next. Coming up on First Take, James Harden wants out of Houston, but where should he end up? Here's a hint. Neither of our guys thinks